Hey guys, this is Jay Calderon with Jay Unboxing here, giving you a personal prediction for Keith Thurman versus Mario Barrios. And as always, this is just my take. Yours can be left down in the comments section below. Would love to hear them all. A little bit of fight info here. We have Thurman versus Barrios, as mentioned, taking place at the Michelob Ultra Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, live on Fox pay-per-view in the welterweight division with no title, but many title implications on the line. And this is a solid scrap we got here. Pay-per-view worthy? Obviously not. Still, in a fun, unique way, it's a very even competitive fight on paper, at least. On the one hand, you have the perceived better and more accomplished fighter in Thurman, but he's been very inactive. On the other hand, you have Barrios coming in and looking to get into the mix as, the fresher, younger fighter. I mean, this is a big fight and big moment for him. And when you add that the winner will push himself into the heat in a very competitive and lucrative welterweight division, you have a solid fight. Therefore, let's get into this one and break it down. So for Thurman to win, I think he needs to throw crisp combinations. At his best, Thurman is a boxer puncher. He has the nickname of one time where he can land that single shot, and that can be the blow that ends the fight. And it's possible. Barrios is moving up from junior welterweight. That's a possibility. But I don't think Thurman is at his best when he relies upon that. He's better when he's moving, when he's boxing a bit more. So not always having to back up. He can be pressing the action a little bit, but he's able to get punches and bunches going, and the crisper, the better. Which is why it's always a concern when a fighter who relies on that sort of freshness is not super active. That being said, I'm presuming he's put in a good camp, that he's in good shape, and that is the Thurman that is going to show up. And if that man shows up, that's what he needs to do. He needs to keep those punches and combinations flowing, make sure that they're nice, clean, crisp shots, and this, of course, is going to discourage the smaller man moving up in the biggest fight of his career up to this point, really from getting going in his own right, and give Thurman the best chance for success. And I would also tie that into this next one of don't let Barrios push you back. If Thurman gets too much into the boxer mode where he's circling, moving away, you're just letting a guy like Barrios, who has a very well-schooled jab, who does have the sort of, cojones, if you want to call them that, to press the action and try to fight him. And he's given some solid fighters some decent action in there, especially in his fight with Gervonta Davis, where he was willing to push the action. Now, that's a slightly different fight, as, Davis was moving up. He is the smaller man naturally. That being said, Barrios does look like a fighter willing to fight and certainly willing to take the openings you give him. If you're just backing up and allowing Barrios to jab at you and have his way, you're going to give him all the confidence in the world and make your night much harder than it needs to be, which of course is why Thurman should look to avoid that and instead stick his feet in the ground a little more, make sure he doesn't allow for himself to get as tired, press the action himself at times, and mix it up in that sort of way. And finally, I would say land the right uppercut. Barrios is a fighter somewhat prone to that shot because even with his jab, when he overextends or when he comes in and commits too hard with some of his power shots, he does tend to get a bit over his front foot at times, and that uppercut can be a shot that can land. It's especially useful for Thurman as a fighter that has a pretty solid uppercut, especially when he really corkscrews it in there and, gets that double impact effect of having Barrios leaning into it. It's something he can set up as well by throwing shots more to the body, perhaps, and kind of conditioning Barrios to think that those shots are going to land to the torso versus kind of moving up into that uppercut motion. But that'll work in two ways. Number one, you're hitting the body, which is always good against a smaller, leaner fighter like Barrios. But again, it's setting up that shot that can pay dividends later on down the line. Now, for Barrios to win, I think you need to keep your hands busy. Now, this isn't to say throw a bunch of combinations or to exchange with Thurman. I don't think that's going to benefit him to exchange with the naturally bigger man who is just a full-fledged welterweight when you're moving up into your first fight at 147 pounds. That being said, you need to jab. You need to get yourself some respect in there kind of quickly. Does it mean that you have to, again, exchange? No. But it does mean that you want to get in there, make sure you land some meaningful shots, make sure that you do take the time to kind of try to press him, try to push him back. Again, I think that will benefit Barrios the most if he's able to take some of the sting out of Thurman's shots to begin with. And if he can do that and make sure that his hands stay busy in the process, it allows for him to score, pick up some rounds, and of course it actually kind of works as its own defense in a way, because you're not having to worry so much about Thurman coming at you if you're the one obviously coming at him. Tying into that a bit, I would say finish the exchanges. Again, there are going to be some exchanges. It's a fight after all. Do you want to be in the midst of that exchange if you're Barrios, though? I don't think so. In fact, I think your best bet is to kind of wait it out a little bit, try to avoid that first and second shot, and then while he's throwing that third or fourth, you can jab and then get off your own 2 or 3 shot selection of your own so that you can have the best chance of throwing and countering him without having to fully go into an exchange mode where, again, the naturally bigger fighter who probably has more power than you is going to benefit most. This is just a way of, really assessing what the fight is likely to look like, but still giving yourself the best chance of implementing what best suits you. And for Barrios, that's avoiding some of the heavy artillery of Thurman, but still finding those pockets of success for himself. And I think that finishing those exchanges as opposed to starting them will suit him best. And finally, I would say throw hooks to the body. Again, you're going to have to be a little more tactical in there because you have perhaps some of the bigger disadvantages. Again, you never know what Thurman shows up on the night, but that's the perception at least. So you want to keep your hands busy? Of course you do. You want to make sure that you're throwing, and you want to make sure that you're active, and you want to make sure that you make him pay for his exchanges and his combinations. But do that responsibly. And one of the ways you can do this, of course, is by attacking the body. This slows him down. This saps some of his energy. This will tire him. He's an older fighter. He has been on the shelf for a while. And this is a way to make sure that you can have the best chance of kind of putting the pressure on him and then allowing yourself to build into the fight responsibly without having to take too many unnecessary shots, without having to get blown up in those kinds of exchanges, or having to be on the lead foot all the time. You can find those openings, throw to the body, make him pay, and then pay it off for yourself in those latter rounds. Now, while I think Barrios is good enough to keep it interesting at first, I do see Thurman pulling off the win. If Thurman has left what he's had in the past, not even in the ancient past, but just in the recent past, I think he's able to weather the storm Barrios may bring early on and ultimately have some success. Barrios will look to get his jab going, try to get his shots working, like I said, to the body especially, but Thurman's heavier shots will allow him to dictate the action of the fight, especially that right hand and that uppercut, as I mentioned. Perhaps Barrios takes the shots well at first, but I do think he is tagged with that right hand, even the left hook, and the right uppercut enough that he eventually goes down and is stopped. Could happen around the middle frames, but I'm going with Thurman via late fight stoppage. Now, the betting odds for this fight are relatively close, and again, I think that has a lot to do with the inactivity of Thurman and the fact that he's coming off a loss. He's also the older fighter, but for the most part, they're relatively close. You have Thurman coming in at a minus 180, so about a 2-1 favorite, with Barrios coming in at a 1.5 underdog of plus 140 or thereabouts. Some decent action there overall. I mean, honestly, I'm pretty confident in my pick here. Getting odds of basically 2-1 for Thurman is really not that bad. Now, again, could anything happen in this fight? Of course. And if you believe that Barrios actually has his number here and is coming in at the right time, by all means, that's a very solid bet for yourself as well, though I don't know how much value is in it. For example, if it's a close decision, do you expect Barrios to pick that up? Maybe not. So not a huge deal of value there, but you are getting some positive equity in that bet. That being said, I actually like the odds on Thurman of a little bit better even than a 2-1 odds. So I mean, if you're feeling froggy about that bet and have the money, by all means, it's a reasonable bet to lay down that one could lay down in any event. Certainly something that might pique my interest come this weekend. In any event, my prediction record for the year thus far is 3-0 with one exact. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Would love to hear your thoughts, your picks, any kind of bets you might be laying down, all that sort of good stuff. And who do you expect to win this fight? Honestly, is kind of the biggest question. How do you think Thurman comes back and how does he look? Let me know all that down in the comments. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and follow at jcalderon_JOB. And you can email me at jonboxing@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. Also, be sure to check out jonboxing.com for schedule, results, betting odds, rankings, and more. And as always, until next time.